Hey everyone, welcome to today's tier list for Girls Frontline 2 Exilium. If you're looking to figure out which characters are worth your time and resources, you're in the right place. We know that balancing your team can make or break your progress in this game, so we're here to guide you through the best of the best. Whether you're looking for raw power, strategic utility, or something that fits perfectly into your team composition, we've got all the insights you need to help you dominate those tough battles. In this video, we'll be breaking down the characters based on their strengths, but we'll also take a look at how useful they are in different team setups. After all, it's not just about how strong a unit is on their own, it's about how well they work with others to create an unstoppable squad. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into our rankings to find out which units are your best picks and which ones might need to sit this one out. Let's get started. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking units in Girls Frontline 2 Exilium. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
My friends, only 0.1% of viewers subscribe. If you like this type of content, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you in advance for your support.
The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Krolik. Alright, let's talk about one of the more challenging units in Girls Frontline 2 Exilium, Krolik. Now don't get me wrong, she has her moments, but in the grand scheme of things, she really belongs in the D tier. As a Vanguard class character, she uses a sword, which sounds pretty cool, right? But when you take a closer look, her performance just doesn't live up to expectations. Sure, she's got the potential to be decent, but she requires so much investment just to be even remotely effective, way more than you'd want to spend on a D tier unit. If you're planning to get the most out of Krolik, just know you're in for a grind. She's not a bad character per se, but her utility falls short compared to the higher tier units you could be working with. Honestly, it's probably better to save your resources and aim for characters that rank above her in this list. Spending materials on her might not give you the returns you're hoping for, especially when there are so many other options that perform better right out of the gate. Stick with the higher tiers and save Krolik for when you're feeling a bit more daring with your squad. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Vepli, Litara, and Nagant. Alright, so let's talk about the C tier characters in Girls Frontline 2 Exilium. Now, don't get me wrong, these units aren't terrible, but they definitely require some TLC to shine. With the right upgrades and the weapons, they can actually be solid choices in certain situations. But let's be real, you won't be seeing these characters dominate the meta anytime soon. First up, we've got Vepli. This character has a lot of potential with her high mobility and knockback abilities. I mean, if you can push enemies off the map and instantly take them out, that's pretty cool, right? But there's a catch. Her range is pretty low, and she can't move after attacking, which leaves her vulnerable. If she doesn't get the proper support, she's basically the Leroy Jenkins of GFL 2. I wouldn't recommend her for re-rolling on Global, especially since a character like Lotta, who is available early on, basically makes Vepli feel outdated. But hey, you can snag her for free during the beginner mission event, so there's that. Then there's Litara. She's a Sentinel class character rocking a light machine gun. On paper, that sounds pretty badass, but her performance can be hit or miss depending on how you use her. The Sentinel class has some pretty cool tanking abilities, but Litara doesn't stand out in any specific way that makes her a top pick. She's just there. But with the right gear and investment, she can hold her own in certain scenarios. Finally, let's chat about Nagant. As a support class character with a handgun, Naganta's main strength lies in her ability to help out the team rather than doing all the damage herself. She can be a solid addition if you need someone to provide some extra support or if you're looking to fill a gap in your lineup. But again, she's not exactly going to carry the team on her own. Still, if you've got the patience to level her up and unlock her potential, she can be a reliable backup. So yeah, the C tier characters may not be the stars of the show, but with the right upgrades, they can definitely surprise you when you least expect it. Just don't expect them to be game changers. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Nemesis, Mosin, Nigant, Ulrid, Cheetah, Kolfni, and Groza. Alright, buckle up because we're diving into the world of Girls Frontline 2 Exilium and talking about some B tier units. These are the characters that are good, but they're just not quite the top of the food chain. They have their moments, but they can also leave you scratching your head wondering what went wrong. Let's get into it. First up, we've got Nemesis, the sniper who's basically a master of long-range combat. She can reach those pesky enemies hiding in the backline and even debuff them, making it easier for your other units to finish the job. Sounds great, right? Well, here's the kicker. She's not exactly nimble. Her low mobility means that she's not always the best fit for maps where you need to move around a lot. On paper, her DEF debuff should make her a boss killer, but unfortunately, her kit doesn't quite live up to the hype, especially when you need her to be more mobile or deal with bosses effectively. Next, we've got Mohsin Nagant. She's all about that single target, long-range DPS, dealing electric damage and providing some much-needed action support. She's slow though, so positioning is key. And while she's a solid pick early on, she starts to struggle once you hit the later stages of the game. Why? Because her assist only works on enemies with broken stability, and with some bosses packing a ton of it, Mohsin Nagant's effectiveness takes a serious hit. She becomes way more reliable if you manage to get her dupes, but without them, she's a bit of a one-trick pony. Then there's Ulrid, the Vanguard T-Doll who can dish out both ranged and melee damage. She's the only SSR sword wielder in the game, so you'd think she'd be a bit more special. Unfortunately, her stealth ability can be broken by AoE damage, which kind of ruins her surprise factor. Without her mod key, her damage is pretty lackluster, and she tends to rush in, tickling enemies before dying off. Even with the mod key, she struggles to keep up with other damage dealers who don't have her weaknesses. She's also super dupe. It's Sooth reliant, so unless you're willing to spend big, she won't be all that great. Let's talk about Cheetah now. She's a healer and buffer hybrid, but she's like a walking slot machine. Her ultimate grants random buffs, and not all of them are equal. There's one buff you really want, and if you don't get it, well, it's basically game over. She also provides some stability and normal damage, which helps out the team, but don't expect her to outshine a dedicated DPS unit. She's solid in the early game, but when things get tough in the late game, her inability to heal stability becomes a real problem. Kolfni is next on the list, and she's the kind of healer who went all in on defense. She's the best in the game when it comes to HP and stability healing, with some great AoE potential to keep your team topped off. She can cleanse debuffs and even throw in some defensive buffs, but her offensive potential is almost non-existent. Her only offensive buff comes from her passive, which puts her behind other healers who can offer more than just healing. If you need a pure healer to keep your squad alive though, Kolfni's your girl. Groza is a versatile character who can do a little bit of everything. She deals both single target and AoE damage, buffs your team, and even has the ability to taunt enemies. While this versatility is nice, it also means she's a jack of all trades, master of none. She's tanky, which is great because she can take the heat off your other units by drawing enemy fire, but she doesn't excel in any one area. If you need someone to fill gaps in your team, Groza's a solid pick, but if you're looking for a specialist who can dominate a particular role, she might fall short. And finally, we've got Mohsin Nagant. She might not be the flashiest unit around, but she's solid in the right situations. If you can position her well, she can dish out some serious damage. But like a lot of the B tier units, her performance is highly dependent on how well you play her, and she doesn't have that consistent edge that some of the higher tier units enjoy. Still, for those who enjoy a bit of strategy and patience, she's a unit you can rely on when things go your way. So there you have it, folks. These B tier units have their uses, but they're not exactly the heroes of the battlefield. They'll get the job done in some situations, but they're always going to be outshone by the A tier and S tier heavy hitters. Keep them in your roster for flexibility, but don't expect them to carry you to victory on their own. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Lotta, Sharkri, Peritia, Ksenia, and Sabrina. Alright folks, let's dive into the heart of the action today and talk about some of the standout units in Girls Frontline 2 Exilium that are absolutely worth your time and your resources. We're talking about the A tier units, and let me tell you, these girls aren't just good. They bring some serious firepower strategy and flair to the battlefield. Let's kick things off with Lotta. Now, you know it's rare for an SR character to outshine their SSR counterpart, but Lotta, she makes it happen. Think of her as a beefed up Viapli. She can knock enemies off the map for an instant kill, and on top of that, she's got the power to destroy covers. Imagine that. Taking away your enemy's defenses while pushing them straight off the edge, and she's free. You can unlock her during an event and fully max her out. In the early game, she shines like a star, but keep in mind, as you hit mid or late game, her AoE damage starts to drop off. Still, with her dupes maxed, Lotta holds her ground and is a solid pick over SSR characters like Viapli, making her an absolute gem for any player. Next up is Sharkri, the queen of single target damage in the SR tier. Now, Sharkri might not seem like much in the early game, but once she gets a few dupes under her belt and you start adding burn-centric characters into the mix, she becomes a powerhouse. If you've got Klukai and Mekti to support her, Sharkri's damage output can rival some SSR characters, but here's the catch: she's not easy to use. You'll need to learn how to play her effectively, and it will take a little time. But trust me, once you get the hang of it, Sharkri will repay you with some serious damage. Then there's Peritia. This girl is a master of AoE corrosion damage, making her a solid pick in teams focused on clearing crowds. The thing is, she's a bit of a one-trick pony, specializing mainly in AoE attacks. In the end game, that can be a problem since single target damage is more important, but with the right team, but think Klukai and Mekti, and then there's she becomes a beast. If you're thinking about re-rolling in global though, you might want to look elsewhere early on. Peritia's potential really shines once you get a few dupes and more burn-focused units in your roster, but she's definitely more of a long-term project. Now let's talk about Ksenia. She's like a mini Suomi offering a ton of versatility. She can heal, buff, debuff, and deal damage all at once, making her an essential member of any burn team. The cool part about Ksenia is that while she's a healer, she's not just about keeping people alive. She also adds offensive power to your squad. That's great for speeding up stage clears, but if you're struggling to keep your team intact, Ksenia might not be enough on her own. She works best when you know what you're doing, so if you need a little more survivability, she might not be your first choice. Sabrina is up next, and she's a hybrid character who can dish out damage while also providing crucial support to her team. She's got defensive buffs and even taunt, which is a game changer in PvP. Her AoE focus skills are perfect for clearing standard stages, but against bosses, not so much. Her ability to manipulate the battlefield by creating or destroying cover is where Sabrina really shines, giving her the upper hand in some tough battles. She is pretty dupe reliant though, so if you're planning on using her long term, make sure you invest in those dupes. Thankfully, she's not super hard to obtain. You can grab copies from weekly boss mode. Alright, let's take a moment to talk about the importance of dupes. Some of these characters really come alive once they've been maxed out, and honestly, that's what makes them stand out in the A tier. Lotta, Sharkri, and Sabrina all get a huge boost when you get their dupes, and if you play the long game, you're going to see them shine brighter than most SSR characters. Of course, dupes are a bit of a grind, but if you put in the effort, these units can carry you through some tough fights. So, what do we take away from all this? Well, the A tier in Girls Frontline too. Exilium is packed with versatile, powerful characters who can fit into different team comps depending on your needs. Whether you're looking for single target damage, AoE potential, or utility, this list has you covered. But remember, these units are best when you invest in them over time, so don't rush it. Build your roster, make the most of those dupes, and soon enough, you'll have a squad that's ready to take on anything the game throws your way. In the end, it's all about making the right choices and understanding each character's role in your team. Don't forget to have fun with the process. And remember, even in Girls Frontline 2, Exilium, it's not just about power, but about playing smart. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Suomi, Cheongju, and Tololo. Alright, let's dive into the heart of Girls Frontline 2, Exilium, and talk about some of the absolute best units you can get your hands on. These aren't just your typical characters. No, these units are the ones that make you feel like you're cheating your way through the game. So if you've been wondering who's truly top tier, these are the heavy hitters. Let's get into it. First up, we've got Suomi, and let me tell you, every game has a character like Suomi. You know, the kind that can do everything and do it so well, you'll start wondering why you even need anyone else. Suomi is your shielder, healer, buffer, and debuffer hybrid. But lads, she's got it all. Her shields are so thick that they basically double your team's HP, giving you room to mess up without the world falling apart. And if that wasn't enough, she can dispel debuffs from your allies, turning the tide of battle in an instant. Seriously, if you're ever in doubt about whether Suomi can handle something, chances are she can. No wonder she's considered the best sustainer support unit in the game on the CN servers. A couple of copies of her and you're set for life, just breezing through the game like it's nothing. Now, let's talk about Cheongju. This girl is an absolute monster when it comes to single target damage. But that's not all. She also brings some serious indirect DPS to the table thanks to her action support skills. She's super versatile because she can dish out both burn and physical damage, which gives you a lot of options. Her sweet spot? Burn teams. If you're looking to make those weekly bosses look like a joke, Cheongju is the one you need. Sure, early on in the global server, she might not feel like the easiest pick for beginners. She relies on her teammates to really shine, so if you're a newer player, it might take a bit to get the most out of her. But let me tell you, once you unlock her potential and get some dupes, she's one of the most future-proof and strongest DPS characters you can get. Next, we have Tololo. If you want easy progression and don't mind making a solid investment early on, Tololo is the SSRT doll you should definitely go for. She's all about that direct and burst DPS. What makes her extra special is her ability to gain 2 action phases at the start of battle. Yeah, you heard that right. 2 whole action phases. This means she can move and attack twice right at the beginning, giving her a ton of flexibility and burst potential. Oh, and she's not just about smashing enemies, she also comes with debuffs and CC abilities. So, if you're looking for someone who can handle a variety of situations, Tololo has got your back. In the early stages of Global, she'll be your go-to, but as time goes on, other DPS characters like Cheongju might outshine her. Still, if you want a solid early game carry, Tololo's where it's at. Alright, let's be real, we already know that some characters might start to feel a little outdated as the game progresses, but these top tier picks, they don't just stay relevant, they get better with time. I mean, just think about Suomi, she doesn't age. No matter what new units get released, she's still at the top of the tier list, effortlessly carrying you through the hardest content. That's the beauty of having a unit like her in your roster. If you're lucky enough to pull her early, you'll find yourself breezing through content you thought would be impossible. And as we all know, easy progression in games like this is the dream. Then there's Cheongju, who, while a bit tricky to use early on, becomes an absolute powerhouse the more you invest in her. As she gains dupes and levels up, you'll notice that she doesn't just become good, she becomes unstoppable. This girl is the future, and once you unlock her true potential, she'll be an essential part of your roster. I'm telling you, you'll start to wonder how you ever managed without her. Of course, Tololo's another one who shines in the early game and can carry you through some of the rough patches. The fact that she gets 2 action phases at the start of the battle is a game changer, and her mix of DPS, debuffing, and CC abilities makes her an all-around great pick. Sure, she might face some competition in the long term, but if you're looking to make progress without breaking a sweat, she's definitely a solid choice. Especially in the early global stages, she's going to be a lifesaver. So whether you're diving into the game for the first time or you've been playing for a while, these units are the ones that will help you climb to the top. Suomi, Cheongju, and Tololo, each of them brings something unique to the table, and if you're lucky enough to get them, you're in for an amazing time. Just remember, these characters aren't just good, they're the kind of characters that will make you feel like you've got the game on easy mode. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.